At the Precious Gem jewelry store located just a stone's throw from Colonial Williamsburg, you may glimpse a man in a top hat and a three-piece suit with a handlebar mustache standing in a second-story window. Let's go back to the 1860s. This shop was actually originally a residential property, at one point owned by a young 20-something-year-old man named Thomas Moore. Mr. Moore inherited this property from his older brother, who died during the Civil War. Mr. Moore was not a modest man, and so he blew all of his inheritance money, decking out his property in fine furnishings and purchasing fine clothes, including handmade top hats and a large collection of three-piece suits. He sported a large handlebar mustache and was daily seen walking up and down the town streets, showing off his pricey belongings. What was Mr. Moore doing while on his daily walks? Well, ultimately, he was very interested in finding a lady to take as his wife and solidify his family name. Enter Constance Hall, a beautiful young woman who lived just across the street in a property that's now been torn down. In the diaries of Constance and Thomas, they write that they were just a window's glance away from each other. Constance caught Thomas's eye quickly, and they were both smitten. There was just one small issue. Constance was already married. The good news for Mr. Moore and Mrs. Hall is that Mr. Hall goes out of town for 3 months annually for work. Local gossips talked about the affair in their diaries, claiming that the day that Mr. Hall left for his trip, the two forbidden lovers were seen walking through town together, arm in arm. 2 different eyewitnesses even claimed that they saw Constance give Mr. Moore a kiss on the cheek. One particularly observant young woman writes that she saw Constance Hall entering Mr. Moore's property at all hours of the night, leaving in the morning, incredibly disheveled. The day that Mr. Hall returns to town from his trip, a gaggle of young ladies come to his door, sparing no details on what they had witnessed. Mr. Hall went into a fit of rage. He storms across the street to Mr. Moore's house, knocks the door in, goes down to the basement where Mr. Moore was located, and murders him on sight. He then returned to get Constance, forcing her to help him clean up his mess. They were found just hours later, covered in blood, and taken to the public prison for questioning. Mr. Hall claims during questioning that Constance is entirely innocent, denying the affair and stating that the murder was caused by nothing more than just a simple dispute between 2 young men. It seems that despite everything she did, Mr. Hall still has some affection for his wife. Constance walks free due to his testimony, but she spends just 1 more week in Williamsburg before disappearing from history, chased away likely by the gossip and rumors surrounding her. However, Mr. Hall was convicted for the murder of Mr. Moore. He was charged with a life sentence and spent 8 years in prison before dying of pneumonia. It seems that Mr. Moore, on the other hand, never did leave his inherited property. According to reports from the workers in the jewelry store, he frequently makes appearances in the dark back corners of the property and even in the supply closets on the second floor. Sometimes, people down on the streets even glimpse him at the windows on the second story on a dark, quiet night while passing by. Being that Mr. Moore did love dressing well and showing off his wealth, it's not too surprising that he occasionally even rifles through the stock at the jewelry store. He even causes arguments between the staff at times over who keeps leaving the back stockrooms in disarray before they figured out who was the real culprit. Mr. Moore did also love frequently visiting the local bars in life, and so, in his death, it seems he continues to visit some of the nearby pubs, 2 of his favorites being the Dog Street Pub and Hound's Tail. He does not visit the bar for a drink, however. Rather, more frequently, he is sighted in the women's restrooms by lone women looking in the mirror. So, the next time that you go for a visit at Colonial Williamsburg, if you happen to walk past the Precious Gem jewelry store or into any of the nearby pubs, just keep an eye out because you may catch a ghost sighting.